Runoffs are coming up, and there's a lot to talk about. They're not as sexy as primaries and generals, but they can be consequential, especially this year. Let's discuss some of the key races we're paying close attention to, races that could shape the Texas ledge for years to come. I'm Alex Samuels, a senior editor at Texas Monthly, and this is Answer Me This. Across Texas, 28 Republican primaries and 16 Democratic contests don't have a clear winner. So, they're going to runoffs. And the result of those could determine if we get a new House Speaker in 2025, if the legislature will have a far-right majority, and what lawmakers will prioritize next year. Perhaps the most important runoff election will take place in Southeast Texas, where House Speaker Dade Phelan is fighting for survival. He entered the 2024 cycle with a giant target on his back because he was the guy who oversaw Attorney General Ken Paxton's impeachment trial in the Texas House. As a result, Paxton and other big names like Donald Trump and Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick have endorsed one of his opponents, David Covey. And Covey earned more votes than Phelan back in March. Ouch. Since runoff elections typically attract fewer voters than primaries, it's unclear if Phelan can prevail. And if he loses, the Texas House may no longer have an officer willing to stand up to Patrick and Governor Greg Abbott. But even if Phelan does win, there's still a question over whether Republicans in the House will still want him to serve as Speaker. Sensing weakness, Tom Oliverson, a House Republican from Cypress, has already announced his bid for the seat. Another thing to watch this runoff season is how many anti-voucher Republicans will win or lose their races. Last year, Abbott spent a lot of political capital trying to pass a contentious education voucher program which would divert tax dollars from public schools to private ones. However, he was unable to get it through the House because enough Democrats and rural Republicans didn't support such a policy. In March, a lot of anti-voucher Republicans lost their races. In fact, of the 16 anti-voucher Republicans in the House who ran for re-election, only 6 incumbents won outright in March. Abbott is only a few seats away from securing a pro-voucher majority. With a few wins in May, he'll likely be all the way there. The last big race on my radar will be the matchup between U.S. Congressman Tony Gonzalez of San Antonio and Brandon Herrera, a prominent YouTuber commonly known as the AK Guy. This year's primary is Gonzalez's first since he was censured by the Republican Party of Texas for taking stances it said were insufficiently conservative, including voting for bipartisan gun safety legislation in the wake of the Uvalde shooting, which is within Gonzalez's district. A Herrera victory would signal a major shift for the 23rd Congressional District, which has a history of rewarding more moderate Republicans. Prior to Gonzalez, anti-Trump Republican Will Hurd held the seat for 6 years. So whether you're in that district or not, the fact that a runoff is happening is something worth paying attention to. Part of the reason why this year's races in particular are so interesting is because, in a sense, they're the culmination of the work of Tim Dunn and other far-right Republican megadonors. In the March primaries, 11 of the 28 state house candidates who received some sort of financial backing from Dunn and his allies won their races outright. 8 are in runoffs. These runoffs contain some of the last traditionally conservative Republican holdouts, and depending on the outcome, we may see a legislature unified and assembled by the most right-wing power brokers in the state. Early voting starts on May 20th and will go through May 24th. Eligible voters can also cast a ballot on Election Day, May 28th. It's worth noting, though, that if you voted in a party's primary in March, you can only vote in that same party's runoff. If you didn't cast a ballot in either primary, you can vote in either party's runoff. So while any election, including a runoff, is always important, there's really a lot worth paying attention to this year. If you're interested in the results, and perhaps more importantly, what those results mean for Texans like yourself, keep up with our work and analysis at texasmonthly.com.